Now the latest from ITV News Central in the East Midlands.
Welcome to ITV News Central for the East Midlands. On our programme tonight, the boss of Leicestershire-based retailer Next warns Christmas deliveries could be hit because of a skills shortage. He's joined hauliers urging the government to ease immigration rules.
The key workers being given dedicated slots at a petrol station in Hollyoaks.
One of the things I do remember is a couple of paramedics that said that if this place wasn't open last night, they wouldn't be able to get to work in the morning.
As a weather presenter at ITV for years, I've seen how the climate is changing. Join me on my journey as I learn more about achievable, positive steps I can take to help in the fight to save our planet.
And autumn is certainly kicking in, but for now we swap the crisp sunshine of today for even more wet and windy weather. I'll have the latest.
Good evening. After days of queuing at the petrol pumps linked to a shortage of HGV drivers, the boss of fashion giant Next is warning that Christmas deliveries could be hit because of a skills shortage in its warehouse and transport divisions. Lord Wolfson, who's the chief executive of the firm, which has its headquarters in Leicestershire, has joined those criticising the government.
He says the HGV crisis should have been foreseen for months. In the past few weeks, Tesco and Warburton's are among the other major names to speak up, as well as petrol firm BP, which of course sparked the fuel panic we've seen in recent days. Our reporter Phil Brewster has been following the story and sent this report from Leicester.
Behind me here is a brand new Next store at Foss Shopping Park. It only opened in April. Today the company announced that it and maybe many others are facing severe pressures. The Next chief executive, Lord Wolfson, has said that unless immigration rules are relaxed, staff shortages are likely, along with price rises in the run-up to Christmas. He said that warehouse and logistics staffing are under pressure and that increased shipping costs mean that prices could rise anywhere between 2 and 6%. Now, in a statement, Lord Wolfson added, the HGV crisis was foreseen and widely predicted for many months. For the sake of the wider UK economy, we hope the government will take a more decisive approach to the looming skills crisis in warehouses, restaurants, hotels, care homes and many seasonal industries. All this comes, of course, at a time of huge uncertainty and a noticeable shortage of HGV drivers, meaning that many shops and supermarkets are struggling to get the stock in to fill their shelves. Of course, it follows several days of chaos at petrol forecourts too, after a report of tanker driver shortages led to a wave of panic buying at the petrol stations. Just a few hundred yards from here is a local Sainsbury's petrol station. Today that was very busy, packed with cars and drivers trying to fill up their fuel tanks, and many of those pumps themselves already have signs on saying that they are indeed empty. Well, earlier on today we spoke to the East Midlands Chamber of Commerce, who said that relaxing immigration rules in the short term does make sense.
So over 2/3 of our members tell us they're creating jobs at the moment. The bad news or the downside is 70% are struggling to fill those roles, and that creates difficulties both in the short term, the medium term and the long term. If anything, we're in a position at the moment where businesses are worried about over trading, so they're having to turn down opportunities because they can't fill those gaps. It's really, really important that we get people in, we get a workforce in to fill the jobs being created so we can realise the growth that the country's heading for.
Now, the government has recently announced it's granting temporary visas to 5,000 HGV drivers and 5,500 poultry workers from the EU to come here and work in the UK. The PM also said that he was not prepared to address labour shortages with what he called as uncontrolled immigration, leading to a low-wage, low-skill economy. But this also is embarrassing and difficult for the government. Not only is Lord Wolfson, the CEO of Next and a Conservative peer, he's also a prominent Brexiteer. And the fact that he is calling for immigration rules to be relaxed has got many people wondering just how bad the situation is. Phil Brewster, ITV News, Leicester.
Well, meanwhile, as motorists across the East Midlands continue to face empty pumps on the forecourts, one garage in Nottinghamshire is setting aside some of its petrol just for health and care workers.
The garage owner was approached by a company whose care assistants have been struggling to reach elderly people in their homes. With the latest on how the fuel crisis is hitting our region, here's our correspondent, Peter Byrne.
At this garage in Swadlincote in Derbyshire, motorists had struck oil and struck lucky. It had a delivery yesterday, and after 2 days run dry, the pumps were back in action.
I was a bit nervous coming out this morning because I've got some petrol left, but I thought, oh, am I going to end up sort of driving around in a vain hope to get the petrol? But yeah, straight in, no problem.
We come 2 days ago, we didn't have nothing. Now we got Morrison's down the road, they didn't have nothing, so we just left it. But today, we got something. I finally got something.
The picture generally across the East Midlands, though, is patchy. In cities and large towns in particular, fuel is still hard to come by, as this care provider from Mansfield Woodhouse in Nottinghamshire will testify. Its staff have been struggling to fill up so they can make their home visits. In desperation, one of the directors approached a garage owner in Huthwaite for help. Sivapalan Krishanand agreed and is now offering dedicated time slots to care workers and NHS staff.
Staff not being able to get the fuel they need at the time they needed it, then they were caught in queues, traffic jams, potentially arriving to clients' visits late. And we wanted to be able to try and give them the resources they needed to do their job properly.
It just takes a bit of common sense like this for you and I, quick conversation, and create something that's on a wider scale.
That's good.
So we're saving lives.
Thanks very much. Straight away I realised is how important, and because also my wife works in NHS, they need the care. Staff can wait hours and hours. They need to be there to give their medicines and things like that.
The crisis has mainly been caused by a shortage of lorry drivers. Tony Jackson, a truck driver of 35 years, wants to do his bit, but has been off the road for 2 weeks. It's because he's having to wait for his HGV licence and tachograph card to be renewed. Tony from Newell in Derbyshire blames the DVLA for the delay. For now, this is the closest he'll get to a lorry.
Everything nowadays is blamed on COVID. I'm thinking that it's time to stop blaming COVID for the DVLA and other government departments such as the councils to get back to work and to do the job that they're paid to do and to keep the country running properly.
The government insists the situation is improving, but it's taking no chances. The army is now on standby to get fuel supplies moving around the country, and over the next few days we should see soldiers at the wheel of petrol tankers. Motorists will be hoping that puts an end to scenes like these. Peter Byrne, ITV News.
Well, at the start of the programme, we reported on how the boss of Next was concerned about how a shortage of skilled drivers would disrupt his business at Christmas. Well, the government has responded to the shortage of drivers by issuing temporary 3-month visas to try to plug that gap with foreign workers.
But the industry says a long-term solution is needed. Stuart Leiths has been to an HGV's training centre to see what's being done here to increase the number of drivers.
The recent fuel shortages have once again drawn attention to the need for more HGV drivers in the UK. It's affected supply chains in a number of retail sectors. The government wants to encourage more people to enter the profession, but at this HGV training centre in Peterborough, they say it will take time to train more drivers.
At the moment we're struggling to find theory tests for the drivers, so until the availability for theory tests increase, we can only do so much, as you need to pass them prior to doing your practical training. There's a wait for theory tests at the moment, struggling to get any before the new year.
The Road Haulage Association has estimated that the shortage of qualified HGV drivers is now over 100,000. The government has written to drivers who've left the sector asking them to return, and it's offered temporary visas for up to 5,000 foreign tanker and HGV drivers to work in the UK in the run-up to Christmas. It's also announced plans to scrap the need to pass a test in a smaller lorry like this one first, which would essentially mean a car driver could begin training to drive an HGV.
Another issue that could arise for training centres is that if you can skip the Category C training for vehicles like this and move straight to HGVs, well, Stephanie has 5 of these that have cost thousands of pounds, and that move would basically make many of them redundant.
Carl has his HGV test tomorrow, and he says he's not put off by the potential for long days behind the wheel.
Well, I enjoy the outdoors and I've always enjoyed driving. I've tried office work before and it wasn't for me. I did that for a year and a half and then thought I'll get on the road, and once I passed my Class 2 licence with rigid 4.5 years ago, I thought I'd step up to a new challenge and then start doing the R6.
The only way to get more HGVs on the roads making deliveries is to find a way to increase the supply of qualified drivers. Stuart Leiths, ITV News.
Next tonight, despite some heckling in the hall, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has won warm praise from East Midlands delegates after his keynote speech to his party's conference in Brighton.
Well, he set out big promises on health, education and housing and insisted he could make Brexit work. But has he done enough to win back the trust of the region's voters who've turned away from Labour? From Brighton, our political correspondent Alison Mackenzie reports.
Welcome Keir Starmer, our next Labour Prime Minister and leader of the Labour Party.
I'm here, this is my day, I'll show you how I can take us into government. An upbeat Keir Starmer on stage in Brighton.
I've waited 17 months, 25 days and 2 hours to appear in front of you in this hall as leader of our great party.
It was another hour and a half for him to lay out what many claim have been absent: policies. Labour will recruit more teachers, make our homes greener, tackle mental health sooner. He said he will also root out the scourge of antisocial behaviour.
There will be no promises we can't keep or commitments we can't pay for. Too often in the history of this party, our dream of the good society falls foul of the belief that we will not run a strong economy. But you don't get one without the other. And under my leadership, we are committed to both.
There were some heckles to deal with from the left wing of the party, but then the rousing finish.
These are the tools of my trade, and with them, I will go to work. Thank you, conference.
What Keir demonstrated was that he has a vision for the country. We're going to transform the country, and clearly the Tories are incompetent. They've been in for 11 years. It's time for change, and I think he's going to bring the party together too.
This is my first ever conference, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I do value what he said.
Can he win power? You've got people on the left of the party saying he's dividing the party.
Well, no, he's got full power, full support from me, always, because I believe what he says.
Keir Starmer hopes his message will spread from here in Brighton to those seats in the East Midlands that turned blue last time. Gedling, Bolsover, Bassetlaw, Lincoln. Can they put him into number 10 Downing Street? Alison Mackenzie, ITV News, Brighton.
Work has begun to demolish part of Leicester Cathedral ahead of a multi-million-pound extension of the building. The cathedral's 1930s old song school building is carefully being dismantled to transform the inside of the historic structure and create a space for cultural and educational activities. The cathedral is the resting place for the remains of King Richard III and attracts tens of thousands of visitors every year. The cathedral will remain open until January next year and then remain closed until the work is complete in 2023.
The fundraising journey has been a long one and at times difficult, but thanks to the amazing generosity of local people, organisations, funders and the National Heritage Lottery Fund, we have raised £12.7 million, which is what we need to deliver and complete this amazing Leicester Cathedral Revealed project. So it's been an amazing journey and we are hugely grateful to everyone that's contributed so generously to our funding.
The ITV Evening News is a few moments away. Let's take a look at what's coming up with Mary Nightingale.
Coming up, handcuffed and falsely arrested. The shocking details of Sarah Everard's kidnap and murder. A court has heard her killer used his police ID to trick Sarah as she walked home. Wayne Couzens is being sentenced at the Old Bailey this week. Also ahead, the army will be delivering fuel in days, but the government still insists the crisis is under control. Plus 95 years of Winnie the Pooh, how a new birthday prequel will complete his story. So do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Now, it won't have escaped your notice that the impact of climate change is never far from the agenda at the moment, especially with the United Nations Climate Change Conference just around the corner. A recent report produced by the world's leading climate experts has warned that we're running out of time to stop the worst effects of global warming.
All sounds a bit glum, doesn't it? Can feel overwhelming to know what to do for the best. In the first of a 5-part series, ITV weather presenter Alex Beresford looks at some of the simple changes we can all make as we try to save our planet.
As a weather presenter here at ITV over the last 15 years, I've seen firsthand how the climate is changing and how much more extreme our weather is getting. Here in the UK, in just the last decade, we've seen some of the wettest, driest and sunniest years since records began. Over the next few weeks, join me as I learn more about what I can do in positive, tangible ways that can help in the fight against climate change. I've come to meet the Hall family, who've agreed to have their carbon footprint looked at by the Worldwide Fund for Nature charity to see how some small changes and tweaks to their daily routine can start to make a real difference. Hello guys, how are we doing? Morning. Lucy and Clive and their sons Joe and Harry have been joined by Joe from WWF to take them through an online questionnaire and see how they might reduce their impact on the world around them.
You know, everything that we do has an impact on the environment, from the way we travel, the food we buy, the way we heat our homes.
So we're going to leave the Hall family learning more, but how much do people on the streets of Sneinton in Nottingham know?
Not much, just that it's sort of the trace you leave behind by how much you consume.
I suppose it's to do with how much carbon you generate out of everything that you do, so the clothes you buy, the transport you use, how you heat your home and things like that. It's all that combined together.
Well, I know all about carbon footprint because I'm a sustainable fashion designer, so that's something that's important to me.
Back with Joe, and I asked her if it's really something that can fit in with everyone's budget.
Obviously, the environment might not be a top priority for everyone, so that's why really thinking about the really small changes that you can make to your day-to-day life, which might even cut bills, for example, if you're heating your home to a lower temperature or things like that.
Onto the questionnaire, and we're tackling transport, the biggest polluting sector in the UK.
So the first question in the transport section is, what kind of vehicle do you travel in most as a driver or a passenger?
We do quite a lot of walking as a family, so the boys will walk to school, but I would say car is the vehicle we most often.
I think we can't avoid that one.
Top tips from us in terms of how to cut emissions from transport. I suppose the first is from sort of journeys under 5 miles. I think even under 2 miles, sort of 60% of those journeys are taken by car at the moment.
Final verdict. They're higher than the ultimate target, but with plenty of ideas for improvement. So guys, how are you feeling about that? Were there any surprises in there?
So I think for me the biggest surprise was how relatively straightforward it would be to make changes to shopping and what we eat. I'm not surprised by the car. I knew that that's something that we really could make a big change.
And boys?
I'd say the thing that surprised me most was changing the heat by just 1 degree would make a big difference.
I'm at fault here because I'm the one that gets very, very cold. We'll turn it down because that can make a huge difference. I was shocked.
Well, that was really interesting. They're clearly doing some really good things. There is room for improvement. And of course, the nights are drawing in. It's going to get colder before we know it. And one of the smallest tweaks, literally a tweak, is to Just turn the heating in the other direction, save some energy and save money. It's a win-win.
Some really interesting ideas there. And if you want to work out your own carbon footprint, then head to our website. That's itv.com/central to find out more. Next week, Alex will be looking at how much food we waste and some easy tips on how to reduce it.
There's been a bit of climate change over the last 24 hours. It's got a bit cooler, hasn't it? We'll have our weather forecast very shortly. Well, next tonight, we have the third of our reports on our Pride of Britain regional fundraisers. These are remarkable people who really do go the extra mile to help others. Whether it's a cause close to their hearts or just wanting to help those less fortunate, our shortlisted nominees are special people.
The overall winner will be announced on Friday and be invited to rub shoulders with celebrities at the glitzy Pride of Britain televised ceremony in London. But first, Jane Hesketh has Sally's story.
Another weekend and it's another fundraising event for Sally. 10 years ago, she set up her charity GEMS. The initials stand for Gilly, Elizabeth, Meg and Sarah. 4 close friends she supported through cancer treatment. Sadly, 3 of them have passed away. But Sally was so struck by the lack of comfortable facilities for patients having chemotherapy, she decided to raise money for the Leicester Royal Infirmary to make patients' stay in hospital more bearable. Meg is the only one of the 4 who survived.
And we used to talk about what we could do to make money, to make it better where we were. And that's how Sally, I assume that's how Sally got, because the next thing she's there saying, right, I'm doing this, and we all have to do it.
Everything she sells has been donated, and even hubby Andy gets roped in to do cookery demonstrations.
People say you've got to raise money, you've got to sort of hit hard, and I don't agree with that. You know, you've got to raise money. I think people have got to have a nice time, whatever event that you do, and they've got to have value for money.
All the money raised supports the chemotherapy suite at the Royal Infirmary. She's refurbished the day rooms where patients get their treatment and put in a cafe. She's also revamped the disused balconies to make them a calming, welcoming space. In the last decade, she's given £275,000 to the department to improve patient care.
Every little bit of patient's care makes a difference to the way that they're feeling, and unfortunately we're in a really busy department. There are unfortunately waits that can't be avoided, and making sure that people are comfortable and in nice surroundings during that time is really important. I think that lots of people who attend here don't actually realise how much she's really done for the department and to make a difference for us.
It's our anniversary this year, and I'm getting emotional. And she's worked so hard for the last 10 years, and people are so kind, and they've supported us, and we've done so much for Leicester Royal Chemo Ward.
Like many small charities, lockdown put paid to many events, but she's now very much back up and running and has already raised £7,000 towards her new target. Jane Hesketh, ITV News, Markfield.
Right, well now let's take a look at our weather forecast for the next 24 hours, and I can tell you, it's going to be chilly.
Making the most of it, whatever the weather. Octopus Energy sponsors ITV Central Weather.
Hello again, a very good evening to you. Well, the brighter skies of today giving us a breather after such an unsettled week so far. And we're not done with that weather just yet. Though the wet, windy spells coming and going, it's really one day on, one day off for the moment. That does still allow us some decent slices of sunshine. But over the next 24 hours, well, this is the bigger picture. We've got frontal systems packing in from the west, one after the other through the day. Tomorrow bringing further rain. Friday then something a little calmer and quieter, some sunshine before what is set to be a fairly dramatic start to the weekend with even more rain and strong winds to come. Out there at the moment, things though, mostly calm, quiet and clear. That does though pave the way, of course, for quite a chilly night. The temperatures very quickly dropping down this evening because it's not until the early hours when we'll start to see that cloud rolling in from the west. All the while our wind speed's picking up, so already from first thing tomorrow morning we will notice that change, and Wet weather then seeping in from west to east. It's likely to be fairly heavy at first, a bit of a lull through the middle portion of the morning before then our next system comes in. So a very messy, mixed up sort of story into the afternoon. Then you can see the brighter pulses on the map bringing further downpours and again very gusty winds around the heaviest of those. But there'll be a little bit better space, that said. So not wall-to-wall wet weather this time, still a good hangback of cloud until much later in the day though. As a result, for now, our temperature's feeling fairly academic. On the face of it, 14, 15 degrees. Feeling a little stingier than that, though, it has to be said. For Friday, an altogether drier, brighter story, some decent sunshine before, as I say, things turning wet again for Saturday.
Octopus Energy sponsors ITV Central Weather.
Now, if you were watching yesterday's programme, you may remember this. Yes, we were celebrating 40 years of the 1980s and 90s TV show Bullseye, which was produced at Central's TV studios in Nottingham.
I mean, we were both dancing there. It is a very catchy theme tune, even after all these years. And after yesterday's piece, one viewer from Clifton got in touch with a picture of her brother's bendy bull. Wendy Sheldon bought it for Kevin from a shop in Nottingham for his 21st birthday, 40 years on, and it's still a treasured family heirloom. They say they're very proud of it, especially since it's been signed by Jim Boehm himself. It's a lovely memory, Wendy. Thank you very much for getting in touch.
Well, while we're on about it, of people sending in these messages, Carla Baker shared this footage on our Twitter page as she and her sister Jade were out walking. Almost instantly, they were greeted by blue tits and great tits who flew over for a quick nibble, or in some cases, a few nibbles. The sisters have described the experience as absolutely magical. It is, isn't it? It's lovely.
Oh, it's wonderful. There's something very wholesome about bird feeding, isn't there? Brilliant.
Well, that's it now. I'm off for a nibble now because I'm feeling a bit peckish. And that's it for the moment. The ITV Evening News is coming up. We're back with the late news at 10:30. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.